Welcome back. This is Soul Mastery, and I am your host, Jaitali Desai. And today we have such an exciting guest with us. Not only is she an award-winning author, she is a keynote speaker, career strategist, and overall badass. I want to introduce everybody to JJ DiGeronimo. JJ, I'm so excited to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to get into this discussion.
Oh my God, so am I. So before we even drop into what we're here to talk about today about your book and just the beauty behind it, I'd love to have you introduce yourself, share a little of your background, and then we're going to hop right into your book Seeking. Sound good?
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. Well, I'm JJ DiGeronimo, and I am a woman that's seeking. I've been on a journey for 50 years on this planet, and I feel like I'm just starting to tap into why I chose to come down at this time, what my life's work is. And obviously that has taken me quite some time to figure out. I've worked with plenty of energy practitioners, and I've read so many books and really working to clear out the stories, clear out the energy that's no longer serving me so I can continue to be a light for others. I obviously didn't start doing this, out of the womb. I went to college and I got a computer information systems degree, and I spent 20 years in high tech, most of the time in Silicon Valley. And then in my I would say early 40s, I started recognizing that I had calling that was deep within, that was undeniable at so many levels. And now a decade later, I'm talking about it.
Okay, first of all, you don't even look like you're in your 50s, so bravo, keep doing whatever you're doing. And I love the fact that you're coming to this quote unquote later in life because I know that we have so many listeners who are like, maybe I missed my time. Maybe I don't it's just not for me anymore. So I love that you address that. Now, that's a huge change. So can we talk before we even talk about why you wanted to create this book or how it came about? It had to have been scary.
It was
How
very
did you walk
scary.
with the fear?
Well, I had so much self-doubt and so much disbelief that what I was like kind of experiencing on the inside had any place. I've always been taught from an early age that I had like production, produce, create, be somebody who is helping and getting things done. And so I was very much working in my masculine energy for most of my life. And when I was turned 40, I decided that I really needed to give some space to the energy within that unsettledness, that I knew there was something more for me, but I didn't really know how to tap into it. I had an amazing career in high tech. I made a lot of money. I traveled the world. I had a great title. But that unsettledness inside was getting to a point where I had to address it. So for my 40th birthday, I went to Sedona, which I talk a lot about in the book because I had so much guilt associated with that because I wanted to go by myself. And of course, my husband and my kids, they all want to celebrate my 40th, which is so nice. But I knew it was a point in my life that I needed to just spend time understanding myself a little bit better.
So why Sedona?
Well, honestly, I started doing Google searches for retreats on, inner calling and unsettledness and inner wisdom. And of course, hundreds of retreats came up in Sedona. And every time I started doing the retreat, it's almost like I retracted from the Google search because I felt so guilty already about even wanting to explore something other than what I was doing. I loved my job. I loved the industry I was in. I loved people I worked with, but there was something bigger calling me. And I just needed to get to the bottom of it. And that really is what popped up in my Google search several times. It was called Soul Adventures. Deborah actually founded the company in Sedona. She was a lawyer and started going to Sedona herself and created a list of like proven and trusted practitioners. And I became friends with her over the years. And that's kind of where I ended up. And I feel like it wasn't an accident. It was kind of one of those things that was like perfectly orchestrated in at the right time for me. And it really was sort of the beginning of my deep seeking.
I love this. So when you went to Sedona, is that where you started to give birth to the book? Because I have the book and I love how you put it as like almost like a workbook. You can go in, you don't necessarily have to read page by page, but you can go here and be like, oh, this is a great introspective question. So, if you don't mind, can we hop into this? Because when I got it, I didn't expect the book to be this way. And I loved it even more because it was your story, but I could put myself into it and ask myself the questions. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, it's very much of a bridge book. It's a book I worked with the universe on. It has a very specific frequency. So, I mean, even the cover, everything, because most of the women that I have met along the way started off the side of their desk. So you'll see like there's a computer, but on the side of their desk, there's books, there's sticky notes, there's appointments for Reiki,
Mhm.
yoga, drumming circles, there's mindfulness. Most women, especially ones that are here to do really specific work in the world to help illuminate the path for themselves and others or raise the frequency of the planet, they too are struggling, being like, "Is this really I'm supposed to be doing? This doesn't make any sense in, like, what people would say they should be doing in the world." And most of it starts off the side of their desk. And so the book is really to create light and energy around those women that are having a calling, that are seeking but not sure what they're seeking for, and know that there's work they're supposed to be doing, they just don't really know how it's all gonna come together.
So, what I'm hearing you say is you're leading them to self trust.
Yeah, I mean, I did it in a way that I sort of like flayed myself out there, like really just kind of got into all the vulnerabilities, struggles, heartache, guilt, stress, like expectations I put on myself. And I've been working through all of those. So I use those as sort of as a backbone of giving them permission to be honest on really what's happening in their life. And then the questions, and there's over 200 questions in the book. The questions are really to get you to see where you are in an issue. And to your point, you can open any page, you can start anywhere in the book. And even there's a lot of people that are sort of using it as oracle cards in the sense with the 74 key findings. They
Yeah.
just open up a key finding and read it. And it's crazy how if I'm doing a video or something and I open the book to read a key finding, how it's almost perfectly aligned to what I had already talked about.
Well, we're gonna play that quote unquote game afterwards because that's how I've been using the book. Like in the morning, if I'm just kind of going through like, we all have our morning routine, but then I have that secondary routine that gets me in from my meditative state to, okay, here's what we're going to do today. And in that, as you say, that bridge, I use the book and I'll open it up and I'm like, okay, what questions do I want to contemplate throughout the day today? Because a lot of my content, as I'm sure for you also, I want it to be relevant to not only my energy, but the collective. So as you started to sit down, because you're saying that you're in the masculine for so long, how did you even start to hear the feminine voice?
Well, I started writing books in 2009, and it's crazy because none of my English teachers would have believed I could ever write a book, along with me, actually, because I'm dyslexic. So sentence structure is really challenging for me. But the stories that women were telling me back in 2008 when I started my first women's group were things I could not like let sit on my desk or in my heart. I had to share it. And my initial thought was I'll share it for my daughter and just write it down so she has it. But then the universe has a way of bringing things forward for you, ideas and people. And so my first two books were really focused on really women in business and how do they kind of stay aligned with their goals, but stay true to themselves. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was writing those books with the universe too.
Mhm.
Because when I started to write this book, I really wanted it to get picked up by a spiritual house. So I had to write a book proposal. And my body was like, how do you write a book proposal? I don't know how to do that because when I sit down, I just sit down and write. And when you have to write about what you're going to write about, it's really hard when you work in conjunction with the universe on writing. So a book proposal really took me back into the masculine to like, this is what I'm going to talk about, and these are the numbers, and this and that. And I socialized that with about 6 or 7 publishing houses, and I was not picked up by by any of them. So I just put the book on the shelf because I'm like, well, maybe it's just not meant to be. But then about 6 months went by and I started getting a lot of questions from women about specific chapters in the book,
Oh.
which is, yeah, which is when I knew like that was the universe's way of saying, write the dang book. Write the book, we'll help you write the book. So I went on Upwork. I found my own editor and I had to work with a couple different editors, but I finally found like the perfect editor and we worked through the whole book. And I ended up creating my own publishing company out of it because I'm thinking if it's so hard for me to get published, I have two award-winning books already, it's got to be hard for other women. So like anything, if I can't figure out or I've got to find another way, I just create it and use it and then share it. And this book for me has not only been like such a hell yes, but it's really been a bridge not only for me to kind of step into the spiritual wisdom, but to create a path for others to share their wisdom too.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. And as you started to create your publishing house, what what advice could you give our listeners who are like, I have this book in me also? Where do I start? You're saying that you started in that masculine space of putting this book proposal together. And even if that's where they're still at, right? Very masculine oriented because it is how we are trained or how we are raised. How can they start to balance it, the balance the feminine and the masculine? Because I think for so many it's very uncomfortable to go straight into trusting your feminine flow, that because creativity, or what would be a great.
So I would say start writing the stories down. Most successful books start with stories of your story, a story of somebody you know. You can change the names, but think about sharing like 5 to 10 key lessons through stories. And I feel like, yes, you could be writing the book proposal, but in conjunction, even if you're taking a walk, like dictate it in your phone. If you're somebody that, maybe you sit in traffic a long time, or you're somebody that's in airports, or maybe you just like to go to the park, just get the story down, even if you do bullet points, because I feel like one of the things that has helped me over the years is I've dictated so many different things that have happened to me. And then when I'm putting the books together, I pull from those bullet points as a starting point to create the chapters.
Oh, I love that. That's how I do a lot of my content for my blog and even actually for the podcast sometimes. Like random ideas will come into my mind, usually while I'm walking or while I'm taking a shower. The shower is the most inconvenient because obviously all the water, but I love how you're saying that that's how you're starting to build out your book. So, what I'd love to know for you, you have 74 key findings in here, but is there one that's most important to you, or were they all relevant? Not relevant,
Well, it's funny
important.
because yes, I didn't think about the 74 key findings till almost the end. When I was reviewing and reviewing and reviewing chapter by chapter, I started highlighting sentences that really called to me. And then I just started saying, I gotta pull these out because to me, these are like the transformational sentences or thoughts. And that's how the 74 started. And it's funny because I have a numerology friend, Michelle Lane, who hosts retreats in Mount Shasta, and she sat down with me and talked. I wanted to know about the word 74 because I was like, why does this number keep, like, why is this the number? It's not 75, it's not 60. And it's cool. In the back of the book, I say the number 7 and 4 combined represents letting go of conditioning or patterns we have collected along the way that have been holding us back. That creates space for light and gifts to shine. 7 plus 4 is 11. And that reminds us of our inner knowing and intuition, which is a powerful connection with the energies of the universe and ourselves. And 1 plus 1 is 2. The spiritual number 2 highlights a partnership with the universe, our inner selves, and one another to work together to co create.
On page 275. I love that. Oh, all right. Are we ready to flip through the book and see which one is most pertinent today?
Yes, yes, that would be great. I think so. It's like such a such a fun activity.
Oh, it's chapter 17, planning for a solo trip.
Oh, come on. See what I'm saying? It's like the craziest. It is the craziest.
What I find interesting about that is sometimes the solo trip can also be an inward exploration. It's not necessarily that you're getting up, you're packing, and you're going away. Because often, especially when we've been sitting in our masculine for so long, we don't go inward. We don't ask
Yeah.
ourselves the question. And what I find even funnier about this question or this key finding is for myself, one of the inward questions that I'm asking a lot is what brings you joy?
Hmm.
What something that I'm co-creating with my universe, my gods, is okay. How are you going to work through me today and bring out joy? Or how are we going to create fun, not only for us, but for the collective? And so I find this question fascinating. How
Hmm.
planning for a solo trip. So when you started to make those plans, you were talking about mom guilt. Yeah. And for women who are listening, mom guilt is guilt for women. It's almost like this ridiculous thing we've inherited. And we carry not only our personal guilt, but all the generational guilt behind it.
Yes, don't we?
Yeah. How did you work your way through that? What was that trip for you?
Well, it's funny because I have a whole chapter on that. Because when I wanted to go to Sedona, the guilt of using our family money, the guilt of asking for time off, the guilt of wanting to go by myself. I mean, it was undeniable that I just had to lean into it and just recognize that it's not, it's an energy that I feel like for women holds us in our path. And the best thing to do is talk about it, because if we all talk about how guilty we feel all the time, one, we recognize that it's among all of us. And two, we know that we can't let it always hold us back, that we cannot let this guilt be such a powerful energy that we choose to do nothing.
So I often use it as a reframe to say, okay, if I must have this, then how can I use it as fuel?
Hmm,
How am I
beautiful.
going to make it better for that next generation? Because I always think of my children, whatever I do today will benefit them tomorrow. And so that reframe for me has been so powerful. And I'm sure as your children are watching you go from this corporate career to this entrepreneurial space and to walk with that fear, like that's empowerment. That is saying, okay, it's possible for me also. For women who are listening, or for our men, actually, even men who are listening, are like, oh my God, my wife or my girlfriend, my mom could really use this book. How are they going to find you, JJ?
Well, seeking is kind of often related to dating. So it's important to put seeking 74 and JJ in Google. And if you do that, you'll find it on Amazon or many other places. It's on Audibles and a bunch of other places.
Well,
And
we'll be sure to
I
add
would
it
even
to the
encourage
show
you.
notes.
Yeah, we'll add it, but I even encourage you to think about reading it with somebody else so that you guys can discuss it together, because it's been profound. People have left jobs after 24 years, have signed up for certifications, are taking that international trip after reading the book. And I think what it does is it shows that we're more alike than different, and that what might be holding you back is a common thing for most women, and allows you the ability to kind of work through it, to lean into what is calling you.
Oh, and to explore, take that inward journey, planning that solo journey of seeing what is possible and what is pulling at your heartstring. Because here's what happens, in my opinion, that if we don't step in and explore it, it becomes heavy. And as we all know, that heaviness can often lead to actual physical disease.
Yes.
So it is worth your wait to explore this and to ask yourself, okay, what is this thing that keeps calling at me? calling to me? And
Mm.
how can I lean into it like you say? And I have one last question before I let you go because it is something that is so important to me. What do you do to bring yourself joy?
This is great. And this is a hard lesson for me, believe it or not, because I thought joy was such an external thing. Like when I get here, or when I get that, or when I achieve this, I will have joy. And it really took me a lot of training and wisdom from other people to share about mindfulness and other things that really have given me the tools to understand how to be in the present moment and how to really use gratitude as a tool to raise my frequency. And with being in the present moment and having, um,
I love that gratitude is such an important aspect for you because we often think of gratitude as kind of fluffy, but when you really step into the power of what gratitude can do, literally, we could be grateful that we're on different areas of the world and we have Wi-Fi to connect us, even when Wi-Fi is acting finicky. So, like,
it's
that's an
acting
act of
finicky.
gratitude.
Yes, I
Yeah,
know.
and
It's like the world does not want our message today. It's making us jump around like popcorn, but I feel like getting together and just sharing our frequency with one another and sharing the passion of leaning into our path is, oh my gosh, it feels so good. And I hope that women are like, yes, I need to do this too.
yes, and I highly recommend you guys grabbing JJ's book, Seeking. Oh, there we are. I will drop it in the show notes. Click the link and use it not only as like a personal exploration, use it as a book study. Use it to get together with your girlfriends, your male friends, even your children, because the questions are not just for adults. It is an open invitation to explore you and your deepest levels. JJ, I'm so thankful that you were on today. I cannot wait to hear what our listeners think of your book. And
Mm.
I am so thankful. So I am wishing you the best of days. To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. And like always, we're wishing you a beautiful day. And remember,